Okay, so we're working on balancing the equations or checking to see if the equations are balanced. So the first thing we need to do is decide what elements are in the equation. So we look at the reactant side first. We have carbon, we have hydrogen, and we have oxygen. There's supposed to be a 4 right here. So then we look at our subscripts. We have a 2 here and a 4 here. The subscripts are so small that they only go to the element that they are directly behind, unless there's a parentheses. So this 2 goes to the oxygen, and this 4 goes to the hydrogen. Then we look at our coefficients. That's these big numbers, and these numbers are big enough that they can go towards all of the elements that are behind them until they get to a plus sign or reaction sign. So this 2 goes for the oxygen here. So let's look back here. We have carbon. We don't have a subscript, so that's an automatic 1 carbon, and there's no coefficient, so this is still 1. For hydrogen, we have a subscript of 4. There's no coefficient, so it's still 4. And oxygen, we have a subscript of 2, so that's 2 oxygens, and we have a coefficient of 2, which means we have 2 groups of this molecule. So 2 times 2 gives us 4 oxygens. Then we have to do the same thing on our product side. We still have carbon, we still have hydrogen, and we still have oxygen. And we want to put it in the same order so that we can compare them more easily. We look at our subscripts again. Then we have our coefficient here. So we have carbon, no subscript, and no coefficient, so it's still 1. Hydrogen, we have a subscript of 2 and a coefficient of 2, which means we have a total of 4, because 2 times 2 equals 4. And then oxygen, we have no subscript here, but we have a coefficient here, so that's 2 for this oxygen. And then we'll put a 2 right here. On this side of our plus sign here of our equation, we have 2 oxygens here and no subscript, so this is 2. This right here, this plus sign, tells me that I'm going to add these oxygens to these oxygens for a total of 4 oxygens. Then we check and see, do we still have the same amount of each element? So I have 1 carbon here and I have 1 carbon here. I have 4 hydrogens here and I have 4 hydrogens here. I have 4 oxygens here and 4 oxygens here. They're all still balanced or equal, so that this equation would be considered balanced. We're going to say yes. For number 2, I have 2 Na, which is sodium, plus 2 Cl. So I'm going to write my elements are sodium and chlorine. And then same over here, I still have sodium and I still have chlorine over here. Next, I'm going to figure out how many I have on each side. I have no subscript here on sodium, but I have a coefficient here of 2. So 2 times 1, because there's 1. When there's not a subscript, there's an automatic 1. So 2 times 1 is 2. Same here, no subscript, so it's an automatic 1. But I have a coefficient, so 2 times 1 is 2 chlorine. Over here, I have no subscript, which is 1, and no coefficient, which means I still have 1. Same with the chlorine, no subscript and no coefficient, so I still have 1. Then I check to see if they were the same. I have 2 sodium here and only 1 here, 2 chlorine here and only 1 here. So this one would not be balanced. It's a no. For number 3, I have aluminum and I have oxygen. On this side, on the product side, I still have aluminum and I still have oxygen. On the reactant side, I look at my subscripts and my coefficients. So my aluminum has no subscript, so it's 1 multiplied by 4 coefficients, so that gives me 4 aluminums. Oxygen, I have 2 multiplied by my coefficient of 3 gives me 6 oxygen. On my product side, I have 2 aluminums. I'm going to multiply it by my coefficient of 2. That gives me 4 aluminums. I have 3 oxygens, and I'm going to multiply that by my coefficient, which gives me 6 oxygens. And then I compare the two. I have 4 aluminums here, and I still have 4 aluminums here. I have 6 oxygens here, and I still have 6 oxygens here. Therefore, it is, yes, it is balanced. Number 4, there are 3 irons. I have iron and oxygen, and I also have carbon. And I don't have to write oxygen already because I already have it right here. I have a subscript here that goes with my oxygen, and I have a coefficient here that goes with this one and this one because it goes through the whole equation until I get to this plus sign. Here I have no subscripts, but I have a coefficient, and it's going to go to both of them until I get to the reactant side. So for iron, I have no subscripts, so that's 1 times 3 for the coefficient, that's 3. For oxygen, I have 3 times 3 for the coefficient, which is 9. For I have to do this side too. This one has no subscript, so it's 1 times 3 for the coefficient is 3. And I add these together because there's a plus sign in between these two. So 9 plus 3 equals 12 oxygen on this side. And then the carbon, no subscript, but I do have a 3 coefficient, therefore I have 3 carbons. On the product side, I still have iron, I still have oxygen, and I still have carbon. Looking at the iron, there's no subscript, so that's a 1 times the 3 for the coefficient. I have 3 irons. For oxygen, I have a subscript of 2, and it only goes to this one, so that's 2 times the coefficient that goes to both. 2 times 3 is 6. And for carbon, I have no subscript, so it's 1 times 3 is 3. And then I compare the two. I have 3 irons here, 3 irons here. I have 12 oxygens here and 6 oxygens here. So we automatically know this is not balanced because the oxygens are not. Looking at number 5. My elements are aluminum, hydrogen, and chlorine. I have no subscript for aluminum, so that's 1, but I have a coefficient of 2, so that's 1 times 2 is 2 aluminum. For hydrogen, I have no subscript, so it's 1 times the coefficient of 6, that's 6. And then chlorine, I have no subscript here, so that's 1 times the coefficient that's in front of it, that's 6. And then over here on the product side, I still have aluminum. I still have hydrogen, and again, I'm going to put it in the same order as I did on the reactant side. And I still have chlorine. Looking at the aluminum, there is no subscript, but there is a coefficient of a 2. So I'm going to put 2 for aluminum. For hydrogen, I have a subscript of 2, and I have a coefficient of 3, so I'm going to multiply these together. 3 times 2 is 6. And for chlorine, I have a subscript of 3, and I have a coefficient of 2, so 2 times 3 is 6. I compare. I have 2 aluminum, 6 hydrogen, 6 chlorines, and 6 chlorines. So yes, this one is balanced. That's it for this page.